Hi guys, Mrs. Powers here, and I am filming this on an evening. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do and get your work done. So, I know it's a little different background for you guys, but we are still going to jump into our history for this week. We are going to do lesson 68, and it's about St. Thomas Aquinas, a philosopher of the Middle Ages, and we will look at that along with, when we finish it, we'll look at pre-test number 23. Okay, so let's jump in. Alright, philosophy is a complicated subject. It is basically man's attempt to explain both the visible and the invisible world around him. Webster's dictionary defines philosophy as a pursuit of wisdom and a search for truth through logic. No wonder it is complicated. I don't believe that anyone can adequately explain the things that God alone knows, but I give credit to men who have tried. One man who particularly impresses me is St. Thomas Aquinas. He was one of the greatest philosophers of the Middle Ages, or at least some people think so. Thomas was born in a castle in Italy near the city of Aquino. That is where his last name comes from. His father was the nephew of Frederick Barbarossa. His mother was from Sicily. Thomas went to school at a nearby abbey and later attended the University of Naples. The school started by Frederick II. At the same time, one of Thomas's brothers worked for Frederick II, taking care of his falcons. Thomas's brothers begged him to join him at Frederick's palace. Thomas received an invitation from the king as well. But Thomas heard a louder invitation in his heart. He decided to join the Dominican friars and abandon his wealth and worldly pursuits. Though most would think it was an honorable thing to do, Thomas's family was insulted instead. They just didn't understand his heart. On his way to Paris to study under the Dominicans, Thomas was kidnapped by his own brothers. Can you imagine that? With the approval of their mother, they forced him to live at his castle home for 1 to 2 years. Like a prisoner, he was kept under constant watch, all the while being persuaded to give up his calling to follow the Dominicans. But not even the charms of a beautiful girl lured him from his desire to serve the Lord. Legend says that while Thomas was sleeping, a pretty girl came to try to take him away. He leapt from his bed and threw her out and made the sign of the cross on the door with a stick. Oh, sorry. For some reason my brain was not working. He made a cross on his door with a stick. In time, Thomas's mother was impressed with his purity, felt pity for him, and helped him escape from his castle. She finally seemed to understand his unusual desires. Furthermore, Thomas's sister, who had tried to talk him out of joining the friars, became a Benedictine nun. It would seem that the philosopher-to-be was beginning to make an influence on others. While Thomas finally reached Paris to study in about 1252, he met one of the most outstanding scholars of the time. His name was Albert Magnus. Some would say that had it not been for Albert, he might never have heard of St. Thomas. Albert, through his great wisdom, tutored Thomas and paved the way for him to become the great philosopher that he was. Albert once said of his upcoming student, "He will make such a roaring in theology that he will be heard through all the earth." Thomas was heard through all the earth, though unfortunately he didn't live very long. Thomas Aquinas died when he was just 49 after enduring a long mule ride across Italy. His health had not been good for years. Some speculate that he was poisoned, but in the short time he was here on earth, he gave far more than most through his writings. Thomas authored countless numbers of books on lots of different subjects. His most famous work is called Summa Theologica. In it, he addressed logic, metaphysics, theology, psychology, ethics, politics, and religion. Though many of his ideas were borrowed from other great thinkers, he was skilled in pulling them together like a great masterpiece. Thomas's greatest challenge in Summa Theologica was to tackle the ideas of Aristotle. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher who lived 300 years before Christ. Though not a religious man, Aristotle had some profound ideas on the nature of mankind. Though controversial, these ideas were still being circulated in Europe and in Arab nations hundreds of years later. Maimonides, I'm sorry, I'm not great with these names. The great Jewish philosopher tried to fit Aristotle into his framework of thought. Some Jews embraced these teachings, others burned them. Averroes, a Muslim philosopher, tried to make Aristotle fit into Islamic thought. Some Muslims admired the work, others banished it. Then came Thomas Aquinas. He attempted to take the ideas of Aristotle and blend them with Christian principles. Some men praised him for his efforts, others condemned him, thinking it futile or impossible to try to explain God through human understanding. Interestingly, Aquinas didn't write for Christians alone. He also wrote for Jews and Muslims. In a famous work titled Summa Contra Gentiles, Aquinas defended the Christian faith to non-Christian scholars and thinkers in a way that they might understand, using the Christians' shared acceptance of the Old Testament when addressing Jewish scholars and the teachings of Aristotle when addressing Islamic scholars. There are some fancy terms to describe the process of mixing worldly ideas, like those of Aristotle, and spiritual ones like those of St. Thomas. Some would call it scholasticism. Others would call it the coming together of reason and faith. And that was a big deal in the Middle Ages, when European men were coming together for the first time in large universities. It was there in the universities that great minds were discussing the Greek thinkers, the Muslim classics, the Jewish philosophers, and Christian principles. St. Thomas had his work cut out for him in taking the differing ideas of mankind and presenting them from a Christian worldview. It wasn't easy then, and it isn't easy now to explain the ways of God and man. Thomas at least tried. His ideas became so popular that they were nicknamed as the principles of Thomanism. Later in history, the Roman Catholic Church adopted some of these ideas. Strangely enough, Thomas was never impressed with his elaborate work. 3 months before his death, he claimed he saw in a heavenly vision that his theology was only so much straw. I suppose he was being humble, and so he quit writing about theology and never completed the Summa Theologica. Complete or not, I wish I could summarize the Summa Theologica for you, but the writings are so vast, it would take me the rest of this book to explain them all. Let me conclude instead with a few of his quotes for you to think about. The highest knowledge we can have of God in this life is to know that He is above all that we can think concerning Him. Perfect and true happiness cannot be had in this life. The prince holds the power of legislating only so far as he represents the will of the people. Man ought to possess external things not as his own, but as common, so that he is ready to communicate or give them to others in need. Nobody has been so insane as to say that merit is the cause of divine predestination. And this is from a hymn. Sing, O tongue, the mystery of the body glorious, and of blood beyond all price, which in ransom of the world, fruit of womb most bountiful, all the people's King poured forth. There you go. There's Thomas Aquinas. All right, let's take a look at pretest 23. And the questions for this lesson in pretest 23 are number 4, 5, and 6. So let's look at number 4. Thomas Aquinas felt a calling to join the blank in service to God rather than work for the Holy Roman Emperor. And the word is scrambled in brackets, and if you look in your word bank, the one that fits is the Dominicans. And number 5 says Thomas Aquinas' greatest work, Summa Theologica, included excerpts on blank metaphysics, theology, psychology, ethics, politics, and religion. So that word scrambled up is logic. Logic for number 5. Okay, number 6. Thomas Aquinas wrote extensively using ideas of Aristotle, the famous blank philosopher. And those letters scrambled make Greek. So number 6 is Greek. So number 4, Dominicans. 5, logic. 6, Greek. All right, you guys, I hope you have a great Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing you for Bible. If you haven't already done that video, and if you have, then I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.